Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the best magic build for Fane in Divinity Original Sin 2, focused on Pyrokinetic and Geomancer skills. This is the default class for Fane, so it makes a lot of sense, and it's also extremely powerful. We got great crowd control options like Worm Trimmer here with the Torturer talent, making it bypass anyone's armor. We can lock them down in place, and we also have some great ways to set up terrain with Fossil Strike here, making oil to burn with fire. And then we also have some other abilities like the Contamination, which can turn any water surfaces into poison, which we can also explode at a cheap cost. And the great thing is all these poison skills actually benefit undead because they heal from it too. So our first move in combat is typically finding a good position to set up from. I like to be able to have the fire surfaces here, so you can just jump yourself into fire. The Phoenix Dive here will put a fire surface around you, so if you have the pond, you can just walk right into it. But we want to get into a position so that we can use things like our crowd control Worm Tremor here to group these enemies in spot, or you can save that for turn 2. We also have things like Fossil Strike, which will set up the terrain that we want to be able to deal damage from, and it'll also spread fire around to multiple enemies. Or if there's a lot of water around, you can use Contamination to turn it into poison and then heal yourself and then explode. So what's great about that is it just does a bit of extra fire damage there. We got a crit off. And since we're in fire, we can then cast spells like Fireball a lot cheaper. So this is fantastic because you can just drop this down. It does a ton of damage and we got the burning off. Since we got burning, spontaneous combustion is going to be our strongest skill for just destroying anyone that's got burn on them. So we'll likely be able to take him down just like that. And with the Executioner perk, we get a lot of action points back. And since we're in a fire service, we can then use Laser Ray here. This is actually a really good spell if there's high ground, because you can just be able to hit the targets you normally wouldn't be able to. Took it another target there, and then we have our Searing Daggers that we can finish off with, doing a bit of burning and damage. Got a crit off as well. And one of the fun things is we are actually quite tanky with Fortify as well. Now, the mustache is optional, but I do believe it adds a bit of luck, so it's worth having. For our attributes, now, this is one where we're going heavy in the intelligence. I posted an if and build yesterday where we focus on summoning, and actually Constitution's oddly, weirdly good there. Typically, we're going with intelligence, though. Memory, we do need a bit of, so we're going to take that depending on how many spells you want prepared. This really depends on where you're at in the game and where you're able to get those books from. We also want a bit of wit. I like to go first with this type of setup build because we are going to not only crowd control the enemy, so going first is nice, but we do a lot of surfaces, which is just good for the overall damage for our team. But intelligence is kind of our main stat with the points of memory, whereas we need them. But you can take all the points out of wits and put them in your intelligence if you prefer. Now for our combat abilities, Pyrokinetic is an important one, obviously, for most of the damage we're getting is from here. So we got our skill up to 14 here from gear. If you get good gear rolls, you're set. But this is the one we're investing most of our points into. Geomancer is nice as well, because this is actually going to give you more physical armor too from things like Fortify. But the damage you get is increased as well. This is good. Our priority is getting our Pyrokinetic up as fast as possible, so you can actually put some more points into Pyrokinetic over our Geomancer there. Now, I like to have some points in Warfare here because this is going to give us the Executioner feed and also Phoenix Dive, which gives us some movement. I do have some points in Huntsman. This is not ideal. I wouldn't actually rather have that, but it gives you extra damage from high ground. But the Warfare one here is that we can get our Executioner talent because we're going to be picking up a lot of the KOs from our team, our kills, so we may as well take this. But this is the first one to drop if you need stats elsewhere because Pyrokinetic's really good and Geomancer is just good for your overall support and survivability. You can take some points in Necromancer though, as it is going to give you some healing, and since we do a lot of damage, you do a lot of healing. Alternatively, Scoundrel is an okay choice if you don't want to go with Warfare, because if you find that other people in your team are getting a lot of the kills, you can swap and put a point into Scoundrel, because the Pawn is really good with this setup, as we can walk into fire surfaces intentionally so that we can use one of the talents here with Elemental Affinity. Now, this is extremely good. The reason being is we're going to be setting up fire everywhere. It's kind of unavoidable with a build like this, especially if you have other teammates that are fire focused as well. But what's also great is you can set up and use some of our other spells from the Geomancer for cheap as well. And this is just a kind of an essential one to have. This would be the number one to have. Alongside Torture, I think this one is equally important, especially when you have the Geomancer skill, the Worm Tremor, which will lock enemies in place, which will shut down physical attackers quite a bit. So this is a really good one to put. It also will allow you to put burning through shields, which is nice too. So I always have this on any type of Geomancer Pyrokinetic type build because it's just very powerful together. And Savage Swordal Edge is extremely powerful here. This gives all of our magical skills a critical hit chance equal to our crit chance. So yeah, roughly about 1 in 3 spells at this level will be crits. Very good. This is because we also have Hothead here, so when we're at maximum vitality, we get a 10% increased crit chance. And the reason this is so good is we got not only the Necromancer, which will allow us to sustain ourselves, but with Hothead, we're actually able to get our shields up from the Geomancer skills and basically keep this longer than you normally would be able to. This is even further enhanced with Far Out Man. Now, if you really want to cheese the game, this is the best talent in the game because it increases your range, so you can just run away from enemies and you'll always be able to outrange them. So that can be good too. I like this combination here, but you could also go with the 5-star diner and use some like fire resist potions. It gets pretty crazy when you start healing yourself from them. Living armor has some merit as well, as you're going to get magical armor, and we get the Geomancer for physical armor, and actually necromancy will actually apply to that. And mnemonic's really good early game when you need more memory points, but I think that this setup works the best. Now, one of our bread and butter Geo spells here is Fossil Strike. So this shoots a rock that will make an oil surface and deal earth damage to the enemies. Now, damage resistances is something you should look into a little bit because there's certain targets that are going to be a bit weaker than others. There's mods that will actually help out with seeing this too. This is one of our starter attacks because it's going to set up all of our extra fire. So whenever you have this down, you can then later use Ignition, which will ignite that. For a 3 action point cost, set up a fire surface. It's really good. And what's silly is that if you have the pawn, you can then walk onto that fire surface, and that 2 action point fireball is now 1 action point. But the other essential skill from Geo is Worm Tremor here. So this deals moderate damage. It has a 3 action point cost, but you can lower it by standing in the surfaces. And your command poisons worm to sliver up. Basically, all targets cannot move or teleport. They're stuck in place, and they end up taking poison damage every turn. This is 3 turn duration, which is an insanely good skill because with the Torture talent, you bypass their immunity with magic armor, and we're also a magic armor build. But I mean, yeah, lockdown, really good. We also have things like Poison Dart as mentioned, because this will create a poison puddle, which is great because we can heal ourselves. It sets a target to poison for 4 turns too, and poison will also explode into fire. We have Contamination here, the same deal. It does poison damage to areas and undead allies around you, and can poison them. Turns water, blood surfaces, and clouds into poison, which is really good because if you have a Hydro build on your team, they will set up water surfaces. You can then later 1 action point turn into poison, and since Fane's undead, he heals himself with it, and then we can blow it up and get cheap fire spells. It's actually pretty crazy because Ignition is just a good spell there. Now, we also got things like Impalement, which spikes will impale all creatures and items, setting crippled and dealing earth damage, and also creates an oil puddle. This is another Geomancer spell that's just good for damage. And the crippled status is good because then the target can't move, and they can still attack, but they're stuck in place. So great crowd control between these two. We also have things like Fortify, which mentioned is really good for keeping us alive because this gives us more physical armor, and when Fortify, we cannot be teleported or removes poison, bleeding, burning, acid, and decaying. So if you have any debuffs, 1 action point pop this, get some extra shield back. And Earthquake, this is the highest damage one that we have here, but it'll randomly create 8 oil surfaces within the area. This is just like, this lays down like the framework that we're doing with Fossil Strike, Impalement, and Earthquake. Being able to put oil on the ground is great for when we use our fire spells here. Now, the first one I'll mention is Ignition. It's the original and not the remix. This does fire damage in a large area of effect for 1 action point. This is one that you always have equipped. It'll ignite all of our oil surfaces as well. Once we have that down, our other spells that are really powerful to use is Fireball. Large fire damage, pyrokinetic skills are some of the highest damage in the game, and it afflicts burning for 3 turns, which we can then use spontaneous combustion on. But 1 action point cost when we got the fire set up is incredible because it's basically Ignition into that is a free one. With the pawn, you can set up and do good damage really quickly. Laser Ray also then turns to a 2 action point cost with the fire surface setup. It deals a lot of damage, and as you saw there, you can hit targets up and at high locations that you normally wouldn't hit with other spells, since the line of sight is coming from the sky. Now, Searing Daggers is also great because it'll set burning for 3 turns and it sets up a fire surface. This is just a really easy way to spread around fire in an area of effect, and then it'll have a 1 action point cost if you're standing on a fire surface. It's great. Epidemic of Fire is our major fire skill here, so this one uses 2 source points, so be smart with when you use it. Fire a Cursed Flame, which will fork and impact up to 5 times, dealing a good amount of fire damage and leave cursed fire surfaces in its wake. So the Necro Fire does a bit of extra damage. It's pretty strong. It's like a chain lightning made of fire. And our nuke attack here is Spontaneous Combustion. It'll deal fire damage to the target. If the target's inflicted with fire or Necro Fire, it'll remove those statuses and deal additional damage for each turn of that remaining. So this is pretty good. Honestly, very high damage. It's 15-meter range too, so you can blow up some people after you hit them with some of our other spells. I also like to run Peace of Mind. This is actually one of the best buffs in the game. Increases intelligence by 3 and wits by 7. You can precast this before going into combat with a 3-turn duration and get a benefit from it. I also like to have the Phoenix Dive Warfare skill as mentioned. If you don't have the pawn, this is another good one. It does 1 action point cost to create fire surfaces around you. Even if you have the pawn, it's still good for the movement, and then you can walk into your own fire. I honestly really like the pawn in this build, but I'm going with Executioner just because you pick up a lot of kills. Now, I only have Tactical Retreat because I have gear that's giving me the Huntsman. This will give you haste on the next turn, so it's actually worth using because high ground benefits fire and earth damage, so we get a nice benefit out of that. I also like to have Bless, because Bless can be a pretty useful ability here. But if you don't want to, you can grab something like the Summon Cat Familiar. Corpse Explosion's another really good one, because it does a lot of physical damage, 250%. If you have a point into Scoundrel, you can take Adrenaline here, which is really good, because we're a nuke damage class. We also have Flaming Tongues here, which can protect you, which is alright. Throw Explosive Trap is kind of cool. If you have Scoundrel points, you do, or if you have Huntsman, you can do Mass Deploy Traps. And then a few other skills is like Oily Carapace. You can use this to suck up the oil and get physical armor, and then use things like Reactive Armor, which deals base damage based on your physical armor score. There's also skills like the Bone Cage from the Necromancer works well. If you got a few points in Necromancer, there is actually a lot of good stuff that you can use for if there's blood surfaces set up, because then you can go ahead with like taking Last Rites, Living on the Edge, and Shackles of Pain to revive a teammate. But that's only if you want to invest the memory to add some more skills. I'm also going to mention Meteor Shower, which is obviously one of the best pyrokinetic skills in the game. It's very high damage, 3 sword point cost. And Mass Corp Explosion is also quite good despite doing physical damage. It explodes every course in the area, and that does quite a bit of damage, and we have the skills for it. And I guess one last one I'll mention is Poison Wave. I really like this here, especially on Fane for the Poison Clouds, and it also gives immunity to Poison and Earth damage for a turn. When it comes to combat, our teammates can actually help us set up really well too. What's funny is if you have someone with a pawn, you can actually make them jump into position, put the fire down so that you get the free spells, and then they can actually walk into position here to go about doing their stuff. And then on our turn, we lost a little bit of magic armor, but that's not a big deal, because we can then go ahead with casting our spells with the extra, or the lesser action point cost. So things like our laser ray here, double crit's actually kind of nice. We also have things like our Searing Daggers here, which typically is a bit more forgiving with the projectiles being able to hit targets from afar. And we got another crit off and burning on the targets. What's great about burning is then we can go ahead with something like Spontaneous Combustion and explode it there. Or we also got Fireball and Ignition. I didn't even need to do my setup here because the damage that we got is already pretty great. And then we can go ahead with a big explosion on that target. This also goes great with a Summoner because you can then have some pretty crazy fire setup with their Fireball too. And we got really lucky here. You can see the ice, a little bit of fire. Somehow counted, so we're good. We then still cast our cheap Fireball here at targets. And the thing is, we also have this here. The Incarnate will actually heal from Fireball, so it's kind of smart to throw it in that area because, yeah, you're giving a slight bit of healing. We got the crit off again there. Then we also have our Geomancer spells. Now, this is a good time if there's an area where the enemies are like locked down in place here. You can go ahead. This does have a higher action point cost. For melee attackers, you can entangle them there with our Torture talent, and they're stuck in the spot. I can't describe how good that Incarnate is because it has so many different good fire attacks. It can also set Decay and Disease on a target too. It's got so much good stuff here, but it's mostly that it's going to be dealing fire damage as well, so you can kind of have your whole team synergize there. It didn't even pick up the kill, so what's great is I can use that for the Executioner on the next target there. And yeah. Now we don't currently have a fire surface, but that's okay because we can Phoenix Dive. Unfortunately, that's out of sight. I guess I was just going to Phoenix Dive here and take this target out, which is not super ideal here, but yeah, enough to take him out. Now, if any skills to cast, walking the 1 action point to get a cheaper cost from our other spells would be ideal, but I don't have that, so I'm going to go with a other attack. Earthquake can be okay. Poison Dart's alright too. Impalement will create the surfaces that we want, and since there's a fire already there, we may as well do that. We also slowed the target, which is perfect. And then we can go ahead with, I guess Contamination is kind of funny because you can see all the water here. We're going to do a big explosion here because that's going to turn into poison, which is going to catch on fire immediately and also poison us and heal us. And I can't describe how good a Summoner is alongside this because, yeah, they can just take out targets extremely quick. But that is a very powerful Geomancer Pyrokinetic build. I guess Pyromancer, you can call it, in Divinity Original Sin 2. Check out the linked comment for some more builds. If you're looking for a physical team, I have a full one there. And hit the subscribe button below if you found this video useful, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.